I'd like to call this meeting of the Carson City Historic Resources Commission on Wednesday, January 13th, 2022. At the Community Center, Bob Crowell Boardroom to order. Can you call the roll, Danielle?
Chairperson Drews,
Here.
Vice Chair Schmitter, Commissioner Block,
Here.
Commissioner Hayes, Commissioner Darney, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Spielda. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Next item is public comment. Due to COVID, we're meeting both in person and on the internet at carson.org. If someone would like to watch us that way or by tuning into channel 191. The public is invited to address the commission on matters pertaining to the Historic Resources Commission. Is there any public comment at this time? Hearing none, we'll move to item number 4, approval of minutes from the November 3rd, 2021 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. If I can get this machine to work here, it
Second.
won't stay green.
Second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved unanimously. Next item is meeting items. 5A HRC-2021-0462 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding requests to replace windows, replace front doors, and replace and expand existing fence on property zoned residential office, RO, located at 212 South Nevada Street, APN 003-123-03. Heather.
Thank you, Heather Ferris, for the record. This property sits at the southeast corner of South Nevada Street and West 3rd Street. According to the survey information, the house was constructed approximately in 1885. It is also listed as a contributing building. The applicant is proposing to replace all windows in the house, replace the existing front doors, replace the existing chain link fence with a wooden privacy fence with horizontal slats, and install a new wooden fence with horizontal slats around the perimeter of the front lawn area. The applicant has selected to replace existing windows with vinyl horizontal sliding windows and increase the size of the 5 smaller windows along the front of the house to match the other windows on the front. The other existing windows along the front of the house are 1-over-1 light double hung windows. The west facade of the building has a shuttered window and a wood framed 2-over-2 window, with the rest of the windows on this facade being similar to the rest of the windows with 1-over-1 lights and aluminum frames. The south facade includes a large 3-part window, with the remaining windows on this facade being similar to the rest of the house. Staff finds that the use of vinyl windows and replacing windows in the building with horizontal sliding windows is not consistent with the guidelines, as the windows are not of the same design, size, or pane configuration, and are not of historic materials. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the request to replace the windows and recommends the applicant submit a request that's consistent with the guidelines. Moving on to the front doors. The applicant is proposing to replace the 2 existing French entry doors with new 6-light fiberglass doors. As noted in section 5.17.1, original doors should be kept whenever possible. When replacement is necessary, the doors should match in color, size, material, design, ornamentation, and configuration. Staff finds that replacing the existing front doors is consistent with the guidelines. Doors will provide a level of security that cannot be achieved with the existing doors, but the doors will also be consistent in size, configuration, and ornamentation of the existing doors. With regard to the fence, the applicant's proposing to remove the existing chain link fence surrounding the backyard and replace it with an 8-foot wooden privacy fence with the fence boards on the horizontal. and also looking to expand that into the side north end of the property where there's existing lawn as well. A wooden fence is consistent with the guidelines. However, the fence board should be oriented vertically to be consistent with the guidelines. Additionally, the fence cannot exceed 6 feet in height unless the applicant obtains a special use permit and building permits as required by Carson City Municipal Code for an 8-foot fence. Therefore, staff is recommending a condition of approval requiring the rear yard privacy fence to be designed with vertically oriented fence boards. Additionally, staff recommends a condition of approval limiting the fence to a maximum of 6 feet in height unless the applicant obtains a special use permit. The applicant is also proposing a similar style 4-foot tall wood fence around the existing front yard area. As proposed, the wood fence would include fence boards on the horizontal. While a new fence could enhance the overall visual presentation of the building, a 4-foot tall fence could obscure the primary views of the structure. Carson City Development Standards Division 1.13 also prohibits fences made of site obscuring materials to exceed 3 feet in height when located in the front yard setback. Additionally, as I noted, the horizontal application of the fence boards is not consistent with the guidelines. Therefore, staff is recommending denial of the front yard fence as proposed and recommends the applicant submit a fence design that's in keeping with the guidelines. The applicant is here and may wish to address the commission, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Heather. Are there any staff or commission member questions of Heather?
I have a few. Obviously, the house has undergone quite a extensive redo of that front, probably without anybody's approval, because I don't think in 1885 they had those aluminum windows. And I also have a feeling that those aluminum windows were a little bit bigger. I do have a question. The rooms that are shown in the slide right now, that they want to replace those windows on the right, are those bedrooms?
I purchased the house
You need
at the
you
end
need
of.
to introduce yourself for the
Oh,
record.
hello.
It'll be green.
Oh, okay. I purchased the house 3 months ago from a podiatrist. So it was a medical office for, I don't know, 30 plus years, maybe longer. And that right, it is a bedroom, but it hasn't been used as a bedroom. So it was all a medical office. The entire building was.
Well, my question is, will they be used as bedrooms?
Yes, it will.
The reason I bring that up with the windows is when you go into this type of remodel, you're going to be required, to update that to the code.
Correct.
And these windows, the way they are right now, today, would not meet code for egress.
Correct. Yes, for safety.
So I think the issue is the vinyl portion of the window. I'd also be curious if you've removed any of the interior walls to see how big the original windows were before it was turned into a medical office building.
Okay. I believe this whole right part is an addition. It wasn't there before at all it was inspected. So there's actually 4 smaller windows. At the facade, there's 4 smaller windows where the egress is higher. And that whole portion, if you climb out on the attic, it's clearly an addition. I believe the original structure, if anything still remains of it, was a very tiny home. To the left-hand side where you have the, I forget what it's called, So, and that whole part is actually has been added on at some point.
So Heather, the issue with the windows is that they want to replace the existing aluminum, make them bigger, but with vinyl. Would we have an issue as a board if they were wood windows that looks similar to the vinyl window that she's requesting?
So with regard to the windows that she's looking to resize, I don't think there's any issue with resizing those, particularly the ones on the north end of the building that are part of the addition. The overall issue with the windows is, one, the vinyl, and then two, they're not meeting, they're all the horizontal sliding windows as opposed to windows that are similar to what's existing now.
Well, they are,
Aluminum, right?
and there are side sliding. as
Sliders.
And there's only two
Which-
windows that are up
We're
and
not
down.
classifying those windows as historic, are we?
No.
Can I add? Was green. There we go. Stay green. I don't have any problem with the resizing like we just talked about. I think, though, that they should be an single or double hung as opposed to sliders. I think it would actually look better if they all are similar sizes. I agree. I went by and looked at it, and I agree that that right-hand side is a more modern addition. But I would think that the original windows probably were a single or double hung. So if we could do something to match that, I don't have a problem with your front door. Like I said, all these windows in this house had been replaced at some point because they're all aluminum. And if you can replace with a single or double hung wood or wood clad,
What is a wood clad?
that just means it's all wood, but the outside has like a cladding on it. Well, it'll have to be like an aluminum clad or something, as long as it was, do we approve?
I'm
it?
just trying to,
As long as it's a wood window. Otherwise, I don't have any issues with that. I'm a little confused about your yard as far as trying to figure out front, back, where the fences are.
yeah, there's really no backyard.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with having a fence and where you locate it. I think I agree with the staff's recommendation, though, that it needs to be a vertical type.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, I don't
It's
have
just
a
a matter
problem
of
with doing.
context.
Yeah, I don't really, that doesn't matter to me that much, as long as I can put a fence up and replace that ugly chain link.
But those are my comments.
Can I comment about the windows again? I mean, I would appreciate if I could do, I mean, I will do matching wooden trim around the windows as is right now. I just cannot afford wooden windows. There's shortages. Wooden windows are probably going to cost me another probably $20,000 that I don't have. And current windows are definitely not, I mean, they're super drafty. They're not safe. They don't slide at all. I really have to use a lot of force to slide them. I can potentially, I mean, I don't know. I can't even do anything on the inside if I can't replace like these windows here. Obviously, the assessor's office calls it a 1940s home that's supposed to be non-contributing to the historic neighborhood. But again, I'm not going to do anything on the exterior except for the sizing of the windows. And I can potentially, I mean, I don't even know what else to do at this point except selling the house. I don't know. My budget is about $10,000 for the windows, and that's all I can do at this point.
I think if you went and priced them out together, you'd be surprised how competitive the wood. Pella, Anderson have architectural lines that are very competitive with the vinyl. Unless you're comparing
Plus,
it to the
you're-
vinyls you're buying off the rack at Home Depot, which won't pass the code, and the building department will reject them. So,
Can I ask a question? And first of all, there's a lot of expertise up here, and they're happy to help you get oriented on all these various components of what you're working on. So that's part of what we're here for, to help you figure out stuff. But just one question initially, and that is, the ones that are not sliding really well and that sort of thing you were describing, are those part of the original structure, or some of them?
There's no original structure on the house. They're all
All the
aluminum.
windows throughout the house were replaced at
Correct.
some point then, right?
Yes.
Because, I mean, the general focus we have, just so you understand, we're trying to preserve the old.
Correct.
Historic.
So you're,
And so sometimes, like I'm right near you, I'm not too far away from you, and I've managed to save most of the old single pane, didn't even double paint them other than just putting inside window treatments and that sort of thing. And because they were there, and so the old part of the house still has most of, with a couple exceptions where it had to be fixed. But the main thing that needs to be done if you keep the old windows is to make them deal with the draft, deal with the air leaks, seal them better, get them sliding better, obviously. And all that can be done. I spent a fair amount of time, and Jed here can tell all kinds of stories about his old house, of getting those windows to work better, don't let a lot of air in, that sort of thing.
Right.
There's all kinds of things you can do. So even if they're not the original, I guess some of these have been there a while. Anything like 50 years old around here is declared historic. So, just try to work with keeping as much of the old as possible. Fix it, make it work well, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, there are lots of things that can be done.
so if the windows are not the original wooden windows, so now I'm trying to rebuild the original
Well,
house.
that changes our frame of reference some, but they still might be quite old. I don't quite know how old the ones are that are sticking and so on.
There are
I don't know.
close-up pictures of, that I submitted of the current windows.
Just to interject here, that the aluminum windows we're not interested in. The aluminum windows are unvaluable. They were, like Don said, they were probably installed with no permit at some point in time 30 years ago. You can't fix a mistake with a mistake.
Right.
And
And that's not my,
So
my
if you're
point.
replacing them, then it's going to have to be.
I want to live there for
It's going
a
to have
long
to be a
time.
wood window.
Are there any wooden windows left? Or everything was like metal?
I mean, there's
or-
in the garage, there's a single pane window, yes, but it's like busted up and everything.
So, it's been changed before you, put it that way. Yeah, well then, that changes certainly the equation, but still, we're trying to lean away from vinyl and things that are way out of character and go more towards woods ones that might well be more competitive than you think. Investigate that.
Okay.
And the wood ones are far superior in length of time they last,
Mm-hmm.
durability.
Did you want to go, Michelle? Okay. Same problem. There we go. The survey says there is a wood window on the rear. That's a surviving window, but we don't have any pictures of the rear.
No.
Did you have, okay. I just wanted to make a note that the front windows that are, they're aluminum frame, but they go up and down, right? They're hung windows. But those would be replaced with sliders?
I have to look to see what they have for that size specifically, but the ones that are wider, I did want to do a slider side to side.
The ones that you're making bigger?
Right, the ones that are making taller. So I'm not really, because I don't want to change the headers.
Right.
I want to keep the original headers. So I just want to make them the same height as in the where the main gable of the home is.
Right. So can we recommend that the windows on the front next to the door that are the size that you're wanting to make the other ones?
Yeah, they
better?
should be probably up and down. That's what I think is
think-
most appropriate for that size window.
Right, I think that opening, even though it's, the windows have been replaced, is an original opening. So that's the original where the window was. It may have been a 4/4 double hung, but.
Right.
So that's what we'd like to maintain, at least that semblance of what it was, rather than putting in a slider. So on the other ones that were obviously installed later on, the slider part, I don't,
Yeah.
and see, I don't know if that will meet code. I don't know if Don knows if sliders are better for bedroom egress or the double hung configuration, but that might. Okay. Okay. But,
I think they're 46.
Typically, a double hung would have to be 30 inches by 5 feet or 3 feet by 4 feet to meet code. Slider is a little larger in individual panes, so they would have to be like a 4 foot wide by a 4 foot wide tall window to be code compliant. However, I don't, at least in the front of the house, I don't know about the rear if that's in our purview, but the front of the house, I don't think we're even able to approve this horizontal slider.
We can't, what?
I have a question. How many egress windows, and I guess this is to you guys, egress windows have to be in a bedroom? So can we,
Sleeping rooms, right? Just
all
one
of
per,
them or just one?
any sleeping room.
But do they have to be every window in that room?
No, just one qualifying window.
Okay.
It could also, you could do away with a window if you have a glass door.
Okay. Because I'd like to see all the windows on the front, which is your primary elevation, which is what we normally concern ourselves with, all be the same. If that's one
right.
over one, whatever that configuration is. That, I mean, one over one would make the most sense. And I think you can get some small 1/1s to fit this. Or are you saying that?
Well, I was going to use the same opening and just make them the same height so that it's visually appealing. Because right now it's not. I don't
Right,
even know.
so you'd have to go longer.
Right, like taller.
Mm-hmm. And then if you needed the window to meet the code, you could do it on the side. If
Correct.
you can't get it on the facade, on the front elevation.
In that one room, and is that just one big room in that?
So
right side?
there's actually, if you look under the overhang, you also have shorter windows. So there's 4 of them in the front.
Are the aluminum sliders, are they single pane or double pane?
They're single pane and then they have a storm
The storm can put
something
outside?
on the top, on the
So
outside.
more than likely, they started making those in the 50s, because my windows that were in 1954 were single pane aluminum sliders in 2 of the locations. And so they started doing the anodized stuff and the double pane in the early 70s. So we're looking at somebody probably did, well, I don't know if you needed permission 50 to 70 years ago, but it most likely was okay at the time.
Chairman? Mike? I'm going to make a couple comments about the windows that you have right by your mailbox. I will agree that with one of the earlier comments, the trim, this is probably where a single or a double hung wooden window was. And the way they would do that is they'd come in and tear those out and just, they would make the aluminum window to fit that hole. It looks like very little damage has been done to the trim and probably, I would assume, to the inside as well. There are at least 4 companies that I know of, Anderson, Marvin, Eagle, I can't remember the 4th one, that will do the same thing with wood to emulate what was the double hung window before. They do it in a single hung, and they build that window to fit that hole. And there are a couple companies here in town that could help you, but I think you'd be surprised at the cost when you look at that. What you're going to have to do if you want a vinyl window is you're going to have to remove all of this trim in order to put those in. And you're probably going to have to also manipulate the opening size. If you're trying to buy something standard, as I see in your pictures of $160 or something from Home Depot or Lowe's, they won't work for you in that way, and you're going to do a lot of destruction to the exterior of the home. It would be worth sitting down with a Capital Glass or a Carson Glass and seeing what they can do for you, because I know they can do it, and it will be less disruptive to your home. And then they can also, at the same time, give you some concepts on what you can do for the windows that are higher, that are further down the porch, underneath the porch overhang. That's my feeling on this. I feel bad because, you know, the aluminum windows were put in without anybody's approval. And I think that's already destroyed the intent of the windows on that house. We're not going to ask, or I'm not going to ask that you go and find old single hung windows and replace them and put them back in there. But I would have to say, from my perspective, no to the vinyl, because there are solutions for you. And the last comment I'd like to make, one thing that we wrestle with all the time is when people come in, like you have just said, and say, look, this is my budget. The decisions we make can't be based upon budget. They have to be based upon the historic nature of the building and what we're trying to preserve. And unfortunately, your budget isn't really something for us to consider. And I apologize for that, but that's how we have to look at these structures.
Here's another question. Were you aware that you were in the historic district when you
I was
purchased?
aware of that, but I was also told it was a non-contributing property because it was built in 1940s based on the paperwork I signed, yes.
Okay.
So Heather, this is considered contributing in the
It is.
district?
Yes.
Okay. So I mean, I understand why you want to replace them. And I think replacing aluminum sliders in a house that dates to this period is a really good idea. One of the things I'm looking at is there a way to stage it so that you could do the 4 front windows?
It would be 6, it would be 1, 2,
Well,
3, 4,
what
5,
I'm
yeah.
thinking is, when you look at the building, you could obviously see the addition on the right is postdates the original structure.
Right.
It's hard to tell whether the gable end that's facing us was the original footprint and the other one was added, or if it was.
Yeah, it's visible if you go into the attic, you can see where, because the ceiling was much higher in the old structure, and it ends, like, if you actually go in the
So-
house, you can tell.
So you think there were 2 additions to this?
Yeah, I believe so, or that's the way they built
it-
it.
yeah.
I don't know.
And that may be where
Designed it or whatnot.
That may be where that 1940s date is coming from too, is the assessor got the addition on the record and not the original structure. But what I'm thinking is you've got 2 large windows in front on either side of the door, 2 smaller windows that are still part of that, what looks like the oldest part of the structure. If you replace those first, could you live with the smaller windows, and then when budget allows, come back and do some, and what I'm thinking is if you could get those size to code, it may save you some money too. I mean, replacing 4 windows
Yeah.
versus.
Yeah, and I
6.
was gonna do it gradually, but sometimes, if I'm gonna do paint or something on the inside or trim or whatnot, you don't wanna do double the work. So,
I mean, I agree with Don. I mean, I've worked with Renewal by Anderson, and it's really cool. They come out, they measure, and if you're replacing the same size window,
yeah, there's retrofit windows too, that they don't really disturb anything.
it's really good the way those guys do it. You're gonna have some significant modifications for the other ones just to make the larger windows fit. But replacing them with a vinyl just isn't, it's not gonna get you the results you want, and it's not compatible with what we like in the historic district. So some kind of a wood-clad product is gonna be a better product for you, I think. And, if you phased it, it becomes more affordable. And,
Especially with COVID times, the wait times can be months and months and months, but I understand.
yeah, well, yeah. I think going to Lowe's and picking up 6 windows is gonna be a much.
And I can have it
much worse
fabricated
odor.
too, again, even the vinyl and make it look really, really nice, but I was gonna do a few windows at a time, basically, but that's,
Yeah, I would certainly, I would go with wood clad, for a number of reasons. Durability is one of the most. Wood expands and contracts much better than fiberglass or the vinyl. And, if you're gonna replace them every 10 years,
right, sure.
it's not, the extra expense is worth it.
Can I make one more comment? Just to you, just a word of advice, when you do go to purchase any windows now, verify with the U values of those windows, because the codes have gotten increasingly more stringent. And like buying windows from Home Depot, most of those windows will not pass the current energy code.
Okay,
So I would, and so you don't waste your time and your money going and returning, verify that they are compliant to the current codes in Carson City.
Right.
Because I have a lot of clients that have to go back and replace and return windows because of that. It's kind of a nasty thing to encounter when you thought you were getting a $179 window, but there's a reason that was a $179 window.
they shouldn't be for sale.
Yeah.
Are there any commission member questions or comments about the door? And how about fences, everybody?
They're not the original doors, so I think just keeping the opening there and putting more of a wood door there with the windows is a nice compromise. And the wood fence, I think, will look nice.
Yeah, the vertical's fine, like,
It didn't really.
don't mind at all. And I just like the look of that, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
It would be great if you had a little bungalow. That's the period that it would blend with.
And as far as in the front, so if I do vertical slats, is it kind of like a picket fence that I can do, or do I have other options?
Can you repeat that question?
Like the front yard, as far as fence, I understand the 3 feet.
If you went with a 3-foot height and did pickets, that would work.
Is it-
You could I mean,
Yeah, wrought iron.
I'm trying to remember.
Wrought iron, decorative wire fence that's from that time.
Yeah,
Painted wood.
I would prefer wood, yeah.
Yeah, painted wood.
yeah, in that case, a painted wood picket is probably would be the most consistent with the time period.
And I like
For
the
the
vertical
house.
columns that you have on here. Those would be great, just as long as the panel in between has a vertical type picket or something.
Yeah, and I agree with Luann, if that was a 1950s or a 1930s bungalow, then that fence style might be really appropriate. You could probably find other examples in historic districts that date to that period with the horizontal. But I think for the date of that house and the district that it's in, the pickets are a better option. And it's the same with the 8-foot versus the 6-foot fence. If you just came to us with a 6-foot wood fence, vertical fence, we'd probably approve it.
I mean,
with a
6 foot
shade.
is just your most generic, right?
That's the standard.
Yeah, that's what
that's a
that's what I'm,
standard fence height.
yeah. And now I can submit another, whatever is needed to get that approved.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have one more. For the board, I just want to make sure that, we're saying wood-clad windows. I want to make sure that everybody understands what a wood-clad window is. A wood-clad window either has a vinyl or an aluminum exterior over the wood. You will not see the wood from the outside. It's either vinyl, which is Anderson, or aluminum, which is normally Pella and Marvin. So you don't see wood. A wood-clad window, which we're telling her to go and look into, is either vinyl or it's aluminum facing the street on the exterior of the building. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that.
The advantage to even the vinyl clad wood windows is all those manufacturers give you a shadow line for your dividers and things like that that are a lot closer to the original old wood windows then,
it up, Mike, because of the, we're talking, we don't want vinyl, but
Yeah, I think we have to be
the vinyl
specific
window
and
is what you're
say
gonna get.
metal clad.
I think we can spend years debating vinyl windows.
Well, that's
in
why I
the-
think we
in the
need to be
district.
consistent. If we're
Yeah.
gonna say no vinyl, then it's no vinyl.
If it's no vinyl, you're gonna have to go with a solid wood window without cladding. And
You know, that was,
I somehow feel the compromise is, and from everything that I've read, Don, a wood framed window is far superior to any of the composite materials.
you will get no argument from me on that. They are.
yeah, I just wanted to point out in my house, when we put the addition on, yes, we used double pane, which may or may not be worth the money, but we used all wood, no cladding. And they've weathered well. That's 1985. We did the main addition, and they didn't take normal care and upkeep. But you don't have to have the cladding. It's a sort of way of making it easier on people. I guess you don't have to paint or whatever. But to look a little bit more like it used to be, just a plain old wood window works and can be maintained well.
Michelle? Do you have a-
So I have a question for the committee then. If she's replacing the windows that were put in the 1940s with wood-clad double-hung style, isn't that making the building look different from what its original configuration was? I mean, I'm more interested in the two original windows on flanking the front door be more appropriate with wood, with the double-hung wood frame.
That's actually not the front door, the main front door.
It's not?
No, it's, there's two doors.
Mhm.
So the main door is under the gable. So that's the original, if there's anything remaining of that original structure.
So the
So
sewer-
that is the front door.
Okay,
That is the front door. What you're seeing in that other picture, that
Yeah.
view, that's the second door, because again, it was a medical office.
great. But these two windows are the ones I'm talking about?
Yes, and those would stay exactly the same
Okay.
as far as like size and everything. They're not gonna be wider
Right.
or taller or anything.
Okay.
I see what you're saying, Luann, and my thought is that they all be 1/1 or similar, but
And the same material?
I agree. I mean, are we gonna move towards, what's the best 1/1? I mean, can she have a vinyl or?
The vinyl window on that 1940s edition still wouldn't be an appropriate
Right.
substitution. You'd want to go with wood or an aluminum or a steel window if you were going to be faithful to what was there, what was available in the 1940s. when that
Well,
was
I'd
built.
like a steel window, but the budget is.
Yeah, I don't. So,
Now, let me make one more comment. Because they are wider windows, I think these are 4 foot, I believe is what I think that one window showed. I don't have a problem with like a 2/1 divider, if that's how they want to go, because they are 4 feet wide. That would not bother me.
to be honest, on that 1940s edition, the right edition, if you wanted to go with sliders, vinyl clad sliders that meet the egress conditions, I think that would I mean, what we're looking at here is we've got maybe two older parts of the house and then one that was 1940s or is obviously tacked on. If you wanted to keep kind of the character of that and distinguish it from the other house, that would work well. You don't necessarily have to have all the same windows
Okay.
that look like 1800s or 19th century historic windows on a 1940s plus edition. So you could go with whatever works in that space.
Okay.
And stick with a slider or something like that, as long as you get as long as you meet code.
Okay.
Maybe this question's for the entire board, but obviously the original house would have had double hung windows. There wouldn't have been a single hung because there was no such thing as air conditioning. And in the morning, the cool side of the house, you open the bottom windows, the hot side of the house, you lower the top ones, and then you adjust them as the day goes on. I had 1954 sliders in mind, but they were also making double hung windows there with the cable drawn instead of a weights and cords. And you look under this front porch on the picture, you can see where they goes down. They were probably the same all the way across there till whoever decided to put that aluminum or vinyl siding on it, whatever's there. But even in a 1940s house, were they making aluminum sliders in 1940?
No.
I mean, I've got casement windows that were steel in some houses from the 40s and the 50s. Those casement windows went to aluminum, but I didn't really see any aluminum sliders till probably the mid to late 50s, the mid-century kind of look. So if we're talking a 1940s edition, which is what, 80 years ago, to do sliders back and forth, that's going to look different than the double hungs that were in the rest of the place, and probably in 1941, as the thing says in the edition of that survey.
There are 1930s, late 20s, 30s, and 40s sliders that are wood sliders,
But they would have been steel and not aluminum.
or wood.
Wood.
The
Sliders, okay.
Red House
Okay.
at Silver Saddle Ranch has them.
Okay.
Okay, but I still think we're dealing with the primary elevation, and the primary elevation, we should have some consistency, and there's so much going on in this building, and here's our opportunity to make it read a certain way. And I think we should look to the precedent that's already there, which is the 1/1, and then continue that along if she can find that window. And then anything else can happen on the other elevations, in my opinion.
I agree. I think it'd be a mistake to mix and match, even though one's a later date than the other.
Yeah.
On that same elevation.
So are you willing to come back to us with some other window ideas? We could go ahead and,
I guess I have an idea of, I've just gotten so many different, I'm confused. So I assume I can do the sizing that I'm requesting, is that correct? As far as making the egress lower on the windows that are up high. And then you're looking for a different product, I assume, besides the vinyl, and that's the clad windows, that I need to look into that. I don't know what the product is. I have to actually get someone out there and talk to them about it. And you said the primary thing would be that you're worried about is for the consistency of the look of the whole entire front elevation, correct? Is it okay to use a different product in the rest of the home?
My opinion,
Correct. Just to meet code, and would that be sufficient?
then that, I don't think we have as much a concern as a group of that. So realistically, I think we all are in agreement that the sizes are not an issue here. The placement is not an issue. It's just about the product.
Okay,
yeah, and double hung rather than
Well,
sliders.
single or double, because double hung is a special order anymore. Most everything's single hung, and you cannot tell the difference.
so they have to be, you said single hung or
Or
double hung?
which
Double hung.
means that if you look at that one photo, it's the horizontal line separating them,
Okay, say it again, I'm sorry.
so that the bottom would slide up.
Okay, now if it's really wide though,
Mhm.
and I would have to have two,
No, you could do a single. They still make them, I think, up to 4 feet.
up to 4 feet.
I believe so, yeah. And they're quite, the wood ones, if you go to like an Anderson or something, the quality anymore on these things is incredible. So you won't have any issues with them.
Okay. So instead of opening
As
this
opposed
way,
to vinyl.
opening that
And
way.
if you were to buy these same things in vinyl, after a few years, they would start to bind on you. Vinyl is notorious for shrinking and warping.
Okay.
It does not handle age as well.
Okay. All right. Well, it makes it easier, just to make sure my front is of X, and then maybe they'll give me a deal on the rest of the house. But it may, so can I go ahead and submit something to Heather? Since I kind of have the idea.
Let's do this. If we're all on the same page with the door and the fence, there's some conditions on your fence.
Yeah, fence, I mean,
We
I'm
can,
okay.
we can, I'd entertain a motion to approve what we can, and to,
The rest can just be done administratively. I would
well,
think.
no, we can, let's approve what we can. If we want the windows to come back, we can just state that it doesn't meet our standards, and then you could submit a separate application, to deal with the windows.
Yeah, so you would only be dealing with that one issue then.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we could take care of the other ones. Any other comments, questions? Is there any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll give a go. I move to approve request from property owner at 212 South Nevada Street, APN 003123-03, to replace windows and build yard fencing and replace the front doors with the stipulation that the windows be a wood product and that they are to submit to the board for reapproval of the windows. The doors and the fence placement and stipulation on the fence is that there be a vertical design and a wood or metal product. Anything else?
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I-
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. So you can just talk to some contractors and get an idea of what we want, what you want.
Sounds
to do for the
good, but I
windows.
can start on that fence.
Yeah.
Because it's so hideous. Thank you so much. Nice
Thank
meeting
you,
you.
Ella.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next item is HRC 2021-0469 for possible action. Discussion and possible action to elect a Historic Resources Commission chairman and vice chairman for the period of February 2022 to January 2023. Do you need to say anything, Heather? Or can we
I don't
just
think
go
so. I
right
think
to-
you guys know the drill.
You guys know the drill. We'll open up the chairman position for nominations.
I have a question. Mike can still be nominated again for one more term, can he?
Yes, he can.
I believe so.
I'd nominate Mike as chairman.
Yeah, to clarify, Don, I think the policy is no consecutive terms. Is that right, Heather? There was some city policy, but
The,
Move to waive the requirement of consecutive
yeah.
term.
this is Todd Reese, Deputy DA. The requirements don't actually state that. The requirements state that he or she may be re-elected without limit.
Okay.
Mike Drews forever.
Is there any other nominations? All right, we'll close nominations. I'll accept it. All in favor of keeping the status quo for chairman? Aye. Opposed? Okay, I guess I'm with you for another year. I'll open up nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Michelle Schmitter for vice chair.
Got a nomination and a second. Any other nominations? All right, we'll close the nominations. All in favor of Michelle for vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it'll look just like this year, only without masks, hopefully. HRC 2021 0466 for possible action, discussion and possible action to approve the Historic Resources Commission annual report for 2021 to be presented to the Board of Supervisors. Heather.
Thank you, Heather Ferris, for the record. The HRC bylaws require the HRC to submit an annual report to the Board of Supervisors, including information about cases reviewed by the HRC, administrative reviews, and information regarding other historic preservation activities. I provided you with the draft report for your consideration, and I'm available for any questions.
We've got the report before us. Any questions or comments, additions?
Like to make a motion?
Any public comment? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the 2021 Historic Resources Commission annual report to the Board of Supervisors as presented by staff.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks for putting that together, Heather. When are we going to present that?
To the board,
Yeah.
in February, probably the second meeting in February.
All right. I'll put it on my calendar. Next item, 5D, HRC 2021-0465 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding potential nominations for the 2022 Carson City Historic Preservation Awards for outstanding achievements in historic preservation. Has anybody even had any thought?
We didn't nominate the Bank Saloon last year, did we? I think that would be good. I nominate them.
Any other ideas? Usually what we do is get a list, and I think we have some time too, so that if
Yes.
we'll
We'll bring it back in
bring it
March.
back to another meeting, and if any of the public out there would like to
I thought we had a list that we
give us
were
some
working on
nominations.
last year.
Yeah, at our next meeting, I guess at our next meeting, could you give us, do we have the list from last year? Hope?
I'll see what I can dig up.
Yeah, just to, so things don't drop off. Okay, so we'll make that a continuing item for a bit.
And I'll include the Bank Saloon.
Yeah. I think May is when we usually do preservation awards, so,
Yes.
um,
March is typically when you have your
Yeah.
nominations.
yeah, so if
Yeah.
anybody has any other ideas, just send them over to Heather and we could add those for the next meeting. Item 5ED, HRC 2021 0467 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a review of the notification procedures for new homeowners within the historic district. Sorry, new owners. That came about as a result of that one red tag that we had, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So I can briefly go over what we do.
Yeah.
So on a monthly basis, we receive a list from the assessor's office listing all the new property owners in the historic district. The planning division sends out a letter basically summarizing the types of project that the Historic Resources Commission reviews. Additionally, we provide them with a booklet containing all of the guidelines and a welcome brochure. So they are notified. We don't send it out certified, but we do send it out to the assessed property owners.
Anybody have any?
So the question is, how can we improve on that? Because people still come in and go, oh, I never heard, I didn't know, I'm a new owner, blah, blah, blah. So somehow, I don't know where it went, but
Yeah.
they didn't get the memo, you know, so what can we do to follow up, to make sure people got it somehow?
I think it's adequate. I think one of the things we can do, though, is be more proactive and get maps of the historic district out to realtors and people like that, so that when a property comes up, they know and they can tell their clients right then that it's in the district. I mean,
You know, when I see stuff go up for sale, most realtors say located in Carson City's West Side Historic District. They talk about it, they brag about it, they announce it. I said, short of doing a homeowners association where you make them sign that they received this packet, most of them just default on, oh, oopsie, instead of saying, well, yeah, I blew it. They just say, oh, I didn't know, I didn't get it. And most oftentimes they just choose to ignore it, if you will. And I think these packets also go out when somebody will refinance it or deed a property into like an LLC or corporation or refinancing, they get another packet. You know, I've gotten 6 packets myself for 3 properties in the last 20 years. But I think most people are generally excited. They want to be in the historic district and they want to get a tax deferment. But when it comes to them having to come and ask for permission or help, they don't choose to do that. And the one thing my previous neighbors always did is, oh, sorry, they'd rather, you know, beg for forgiveness than act like they didn't know. You know, so I don't know what else you could do. I know that subject property, they were excited to be in the historic district. They couldn't wait. They knew their neighbor was on the commission. They knew their neighbor, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know what else you could do, because I don't think anybody has the appetite of making them sign and being a homeowners association and things like that.
any other comments? I think the consensus is procedure is adequate and there's really no need to change it.
Can we, well, we hear it a lot, so we should do something, right? I mean, can we invite them to the meeting? Can we get a list? I mean, how many are we talking about here?
We're probably talking a couple a year.
I think
Okay.
I think this last month I signed 3 or 4 letters.
So if it's on our agenda, you know, welcome to the neighborhood, and we have at least their names, even if it's an LLC, and the address, and we invite them to come, and I don't know, just something to make it more personal. And then we could, if they don't want to come to the meeting, that's fine, but we see their address on our welcome list.
Is this something that we maybe can have a discussion with the assessor's office about?
You know,
They're the ones that will have all the notification of change of property ownership and all those kind of things. And it is Carson City, it's not the state.
yeah, I'm just wondering if maybe in staff reports, you give us a list of the properties that you've sent out notifications to, and does the letter invite them to meetings or
I can't remember exactly what it says.
maybe if we just added something about bi-monthly meetings and what it
Here's
is,
a
and
question.
you're welcome to
The
attend.
new city ordinance having to do with everybody has to have a garbage pickup. Those notifications come, no problem. So I don't understand where, you know, we have to find a channel to attach to, I think, to have ours included. Because I've gotten 3 notices in the last year and a half saying that you either have to have a garbage pickup or you have to prove receipts from going to the dump. Well, if they're enforcing that, my goodness sakes, we can certainly find a way to enforce this, I would think.
Well, it's really not it's just a question of notification, and I think we're doing due diligence to notify people, whether they get them or not. It's interesting. And I think, maybe if we just added that to the staff reports so that we know that letters went out, and maybe just a sentence in there inviting them to the,
It's not an issue of enforcement, when somebody buys a home. There's only something to enforce once a change is contemplated or undertaken. As we found, at least in my years on this board, our majority of issues come up because people have gotten permits or have not gotten permits for work on the homes, and in many cases, permits are not required. And we've had that discussion. I don't know how you can notify people until they actually want to do something. And I don't know if this can be done, and this is a question for Heather. If code enforcement or a person on the board or voluntarily an owner comes in for a building permit, we should be able, through the building department, be able to put on a form, do you live in the historic district? And at that point, they need to be notified that there is criteria that they need to follow. It's not enforcement from the beginning, just buying a home. It's letting them, I like the idea of, hey, you're in the historic district. If you've got questions, please talk to planning. But it's when they get the building permit. It's like the windows, the fences, which seem to be our primary obstacles. And fences don't require a building permit. The code says anything under 7 feet on a fence, you don't have to have a permit. That's the way our code's written. So those people start putting a fence up, they call up one of the local people and they stick a fence in that's horizontal. They don't know. We had an issue 2 years ago. A lady on, I believe it was on Minnesota. We made her take down a vinyl fence, which was hooked to a vinyl fence of the house next door. So
Yeah.
it's got to be at the permit level. And then if they haven't done their due diligence when they bought the home, I have to agree with everybody here. There's nothing we can do about that. We make we try to inform them. It's when they do a change that's when we've got to let them know, and that's got to come to the building department.
And I agree, and I don't think there's an issue.
At the risk of violating the open meeting law, this item pertains to new owner notifications.
Yeah.
And now we're getting into permitting and things
Well,
like
let
that.
me connect those two.
We can bring,
I'm saying is the building department should have a flag that would come up of houses that are in the
they do.
department.
So the planning division reviews the
Right.
building permits, and at that point, we're checking to see if there's anything in the historic
Right.
district. And most of the time, the building department actually tells people that
Right.
might be in the historic district. You really should go talk to planning before you even submit.
Yeah, because I do know from personal experience, if you're in the wildlife interface, oh boy, you get flagged right now. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They'll call you first day you submit, telling you you're in the wildlife interface. You got to put screens on your vents, and you got a non-combustible this and that. We could do the same thing with this. It should just be a notification on that parcel. When it comes in and you type in the parcel for a permit, those things, the wildlife interface, the historic district, should all be together.
Yeah. It really doesn't.
So that's
it
maybe a
doesn't
question for Heather, is to verify that those things are on the,
I think
it
planning
is.
is doing due diligence on that now, and I think the consensus is that our new owner notifications are adequate. So,
yeah, we just have to be our due diligence of keeping an eye on it.
I'm happy to include a sentence that they can attend the meetings. They're welcome to attend, and I'm happy to report out on change of ownerships if that's what the commission prefers.
I mean, if nothing else, it's a heads up to us. So if somebody comes back 2 years later and says, I never got the packet, we at least have it on record that,
There you go.
no, you
Yeah,
did.
That's, I think, a big deal.
So we'll just make those adjustments. We don't need a motion on this, do we? Just direct staff.
I don't think you need a motion on this.
Want to add a comment, Mike? I think it's dependent on most of the neighbors letting planning and building know, and everybody just keeping their eyes out. And I know there's a lot of people that call me frequently when something's happening. It's like, call planning, call the city. I just can't do it, but you need to express how you feel. And I think that happens quite a bit. And like this last one, code enforcement was there 6 months before it came to our meeting. So I think staff's done a great job.
Okay. Let's see, next item, 5F. HRC dash 2021 dash 0468 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a review of Carson City development standards relating to landscaping in the historic district.
Heather Ferris again for the record. So the commission requested this item be agendized to discuss the current standards for landscaping in the district and potential modifications to address alternative options for landscaping, such as xeriscape. Section 5.25 of the development standards requires historic landscape features such as fences, trees, hitching posts, carriage steps, sidewalks, and planting strips to be retained when possible. New landscaping should be similar in materials, styles, visual quality to historic landscaping. So before digging into any additional research, I think it's important for the commission to determine if the current guidelines provide them with the tools necessary to allow for alternative landscaping material, or if the guidelines need to be modified. Recently, the commission's taken action on a couple of different requests for modifications to existing landscaping, particularly xeriscape and elimination of lawns and the planting strips. The commission has used the finding that the removal of the lawn is reversible and the proposal is in conformance with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, Carson City Historic District guidelines, and the Historic Resources Commission's policies. So that's kind of where you guys are at right now. Before we get into a large project of, whether or not you want to entertain anything alternative in the guidelines, perhaps you have the tools necessary now.
Commission member
Can I make,
comments?
can I make one comment? I think this all kind of came up from our previous engagement with the Ferris House. I want to just start off with congratulating Mike for keeping his cool on that. If I had been chairman, it would have
I did.
made it blown up into something ugly. So I just want to congratulate you, and that's why you're chairman. But reading through this, the only thing I'm seeing here is the 5.25.1, the guidelines for historic properties. It's pretty weak. Features shall be retained when at all possible. That's it.
Well, I think it's purposely like that, Rob, because we don't want to say, yeah, you have to retain X number of square feet of lawn, or that's not an approved plant.
Well, yeah, no, but I think we could word it a little more on purpose of you have to maintain what's there. You can't demolition by neglect. To create, that's where the problem really lies. And that's what happened with this Ferris House.
So
It's demolition by
so-
neglect, and we don't address that.
Oh, I see. What you're saying is we need something in there about maintenance
Right.
of existing,
Right.
along
Like you
with.
can't just shut off your water and forget it. And if we're telling people that costs and budgets are not our concern, then we also have to say that the water bill is not our concern either.
Yeah, I mean, I've been approached a number of times on the street, walking the dog, about the same thing. And it's a maintenance issue, and I don't know if it's better to address it.
And of course, we're only talking about the street side property.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about the back alley or the rear of the property. We're talking about the street facade.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we need to address it under landscape guidelines or.
Yeah, so
Where?
in looking at the code 1806090 talks about minimum maintenance and historic district properties. That might be a more appropriate place to add that, not under the landscaping guidelines.
I agree, because I tell you what, my biggest frustration with our last meeting was that she abused us of our own. I mean, she kind of came off as ignorant, but yet I know who they were, extraordinarily intelligent. They took advantage of us badly, and that was hard to live. That was hard to sit through.
Seems like we do need to have a discussion, though, about xeriscaping and removing grass from the planting strip
Mhm.
and allowing that. So I don't know how we want to word that. It doesn't seem like it fits, I mean, it's not addressed in the landscape guidelines.
Would it be under the new construction here?
Well, is that new construction like a new building? Because these are older homes that are just being re-landscaped. There was one
Oh,
that,
I was
the
thinking-
grass was taken out and they were putting gravel in and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So they're changing the materials and in texture, but it's a historic property. It's not new construction. I don't know if there's a better place to address changes like that to the property, or if we want to include these, try to include it in the additional landscaping guidance.
I've got a curiosity question. When did lawns start coming in vogue in Carson City? During the Great Depression, obviously, people didn't have money. They weren't putting sprinkler systems in. There's still a fair number of houses in the historic district that don't have sprinkler systems. They're just hand watered and everything. And is grass something that is considered historic or that we need to focus on, or is it just a xeriscape?
I
'Cause
don't
there's-
think the lawns were what we were concerned about. It's the
What
planting,
Well, sure. At the Ferris, you turn off the water and the lawn dies and it looks like hell.
right?
And then you get abused by these people saying, "No, I
That's
didn't
easy to
know."
fix or replace. The landscape or the vegetation is not.
Right. I just want to make sure.
Dead trees.
Just want to make sure that
yeah.
we're not just talking about lawns,
No,
because lawns were probably the advent after World War II.
that's when
And
water
prosperity.
water was free.
And right, exactly. And there's only a few nut jobs like myself that want to water the parkway and have grass there, but not on the inside of the fence.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that we're not getting hung up on, if you're removing grass, that's a problem. I think if you're removing grass, what are you going to do with it that's sustainable, that's willing to be
Yeah.
maintained and at least basic upkeep where
I
the
think
Ferris
we
wasn't?
should verbalize this so that the landscaping is no different than the fence or the window replacement or the roofing replacement. They all have to meet a certain standard of the historic district that conforms with that. Now, we can talk about, should we put guidelines on, you have to have so many trees per lineal foot or anything like that for new things, but old historic district where there is mature landscaping, we need to protect that because it's just as much historic value to the property as the fence or the vinyl, not having vinyl windows.
Well, and I think with that said, Rob, when someone goes from grass to xeriscape, the trees don't get water. And if we notice the last windstorm we had, took out a black locust, 2 pines, and the city tree over at the Presbyterian Church, all on Nevada Street. Four huge historic trees went down, and those were getting water. But there's other ones like at the Ferris house where they're not getting water now. There's some across from where the Edwards house, the house at 412 North Nevada, some trees have come down because of lack of water. That's something that, if they go to xeriscape, it should be addressed, I think, as well.
So I think the issue is, are the guidelines that we have right now appropriate for someone who comes in and wants to take out most of their grass or all of their grass and do xeriscape? Is there enough guidance here? I think it's important that we
And I think you're right when
on
you say,
record as approving things because it's a reversible action.
and I think you're right, Mike, when saying that things are kind of crafted somewhat loosely on purpose.
And I agree about some of that. I don't think the lawn's an issue because lawn can be replaced. There's no time limit. You don't have to wait 20 years for the lawn to grow. You can do that in a weekend. You can also replace it with xeriscape in a weekend. If we go back to historic things in general, it's if you can replace it with like, then you can take it off. In other words, if it's an awning attached to the wall, you can take it off because it can be easily put back. I think we have to keep that kind of state of mind with landscaping. If you're going to xeriscape, then you need to present us with a plan that demonstrates that you're not degrading the integrity of the property by making it all pea gravel.
Mr.
So
Chair?
xeriscape could be allowed, but with xeriscape, there has to be a trade-off. 3 more trees, 5 more bushes, whatever the case might be.
Well,
Washoe County does that now.
And I think that's how we have, I think there's room for that
Yeah.
with the guidelines that we
I
have.
mean, I think we even have, I don't know if it's Carson City. If you remove a tree that's mature, you have to replace it with 2 trees. I don't know if Carson City does that, but I know Reno does.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to mention, as someone who has implemented this code section over the last number of years, I really like this code section. And what I really like about it is the introductory paragraph identifies the character defining features of the landscaping, which I think are so critical. And that way this commission can be very deliberate when it makes its decisions. It does give you flexibility, but you're being flexible within the context of understanding what is the character defining feature. Is this okay? Are we compromising a character defining feature, or is it just a temporary pause and it can come back? So I just wanted to offer that because I feel like, as Member Darney was saying, this is really the character. When we think about the character defining feature of the district, to me, that sidewalk and that planting strip and the grid pattern and the curb and the walkway to the front door, it's so defining. And I feel like this, as written, allows you to protect that, but gives you the flexibility to work with property owners. That's my 2 cents.
Hope was able to push her button just a little bit before, because I want to just follow up with what she's saying, because I like the way it's written. I like the flexibility. I like that we have some very defined elements that they've listed in 5.2, 5.1. Fences, trees, hitching posts, carriage step, sidewalks, walkways, visual consistency and harmony. We're talking design here. And when somebody comes in, whether it's xeriscape or they want to put grass, which I would have to believe wasn't planned to be put there in the 1800s or the early 1900s, it gives us some flexibility, but we have a basic definition of what we're looking for. And I think it's written very well. I like the flexibility, and I'm happy with the way it's done. I like being able to have a discussion with somebody when they come in.
Yeah, I agree. And I think
Let me ask a question to that.
maintenance issues do belong in the.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about that. How does that pertain to what we just experienced with the Ferris house? Because that's a classic demolition by neglect.
But that wasn't.
I'm saying it's
that's-
not
that wa-
addressed.
That wasn't a landscape plan that was submitted to us for review.
No.
That was demolition by neglect, and
Right.
that's where it belongs in the other code item, not,
Should we though
not-
state that verbiage in here?
I don't think
Somewhere.
we should, and I just want to follow it up with this, Rob.
Mhm.
We can drive through the district and we look at houses.
Yeah.
Now, let's not talk about landscaping, let's look at the houses just from neglect. We can't force people to fix those. You know, if they want to let them deteriorate, let's talk about the little shed that we talked about,
Right.
for 3 meetings. There's no way to, if they don't want to water it, there's no way that we can force them to do that.
Mhm.
And we don't have those kind of teeth. So I think the more restrictions we place in here,
Well,
it's going to make it harder for us to deal with it.
Actually, Don, under the demolition by neglect ordinance, it's got to be 25 years old. We do have some teeth there. There are remedies for demolition. by
Mike, I
neglect.
agree with you, and I understand. Have we ever done it?
We got close with the Bliss Mansion.
Not to be have we ever done it? No. And so let's not write one where we feel like we have to. Let's try to work with people. And I think that
Oh, I
they've
agree.
defined the elements. They've given us some flexibility, and we're talking about landscaping now, open meeting law. I'm happy with what we have here as a tool to work with people that come in.
I just have a comment. One of the one of the concerns I had with the xeriscaping designs that came in is that they weren't necessarily tied to the time period of the house or the design elements that went along with the 19th century or the 1920s. It's like we don't have any guidance on what would be an appropriate landscape for that style of house. Like we'd have different styles of fencing that go with the Victorian era or the 1920s, or the wire fence that went with the 1930s. So I wonder if we could just internally maybe come up with some design elements that would fit each of the houses so that we're not just kind of not having anything to talk to the applicants about how they design their landscape and what we're talking about. I mean, do we want them to have a lilac bush because it's a Victorian house, or do we want them to have, pampas grass because it doesn't matter? It seems like those are the design elements that maybe landscaping, we should be thinking about with landscape guidelines, is how it matches the house. So whatever they want, if they want grass or rock, it at least has to be sort of in keeping with the style of the house and the time period.
You're talking about context of the landscaping.
Yeah.
Because you're right, what if somebody wants to come in and put black gravel on one side and white gravel on the other side and call it good? And that's that wouldn't have been done in the 1800s. So
It may not need to go in the guidelines, but I just think as a board, we should probably think about those kinds of elements and be able to articulate to the.
And maybe we should be thinking about this more in terms of how homeowners associations think about it. They have stipulations on how you should maintain your landscaping and keep it clean and free of debris, and dead things should be pruned out. And, they have those things listed out like that. I'm just raising the question of maybe we should have a little more detail on some of that, not restricting people, but making it more clear of what's expected if you are here.
I think with what Luann's saying, is like in the design guidelines, you have 4 different visuals of what a wood fence could be. And people coming into the district, well, what's historic? I mean, what should we allow? Should we allow blue spruce that can blow over every 50 years because they're notorious for that? Do we want cottonwood trees like the ones up Washington Street that I think are native? They're not the Fremont trees. I've got those confused, but examples of, in the historic district, you see a lot of lilacs and these big old growth lilacs, and you see hawthorn trees. To have something that could be maybe supplemental to the guidelines that gets their thought processes going, because not every landscaper out there's a Pete Sinnott that's, sympathetic to the historic district and really likes the historic district and wants to keep that on. But, like fencing, what do you mean fencing? You say plants, well, that could be a purple robe locust that cracks and breaks after 5 years. Maybe something in that vein with what Luann's saying, I think.
Well, that's kind of what homeowners associations will do, is they'll provide a list of plants they don't want you to plant in the neighborhood.
Except I don't think we want to go towards an HOA.
No, I'm always suggesting that, because
And-
that's the only example I have to of how these things are controlled.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It's a problem.
Isn't it kind of informing people on what would have been planted historically or back in that era? I mean, when I bought the house in Arizona, the home HOA is 300 pages of nothing but plants and what you can and can't do. But, the hawthorns, the lilacs, the things that Gail Farish brought over because he missed the East Coast. I mean, to get people's ideas flowing and to get them to do research, as us providing them as a resource.
More like a list of ideas of what will work well. Not a requirement, but a suggested list of these plants thrive in this neighborhood, in this climate.
So we're looking at a resource or a list of suggestions rather than a modification to the standards.
I tend to like that better.
Yeah, I think if we could look, I mean, I know there's
Yeah.
there's landscape books out there.
And Jed's
And-
right. I
and
think
if
if
we
you
can
do
put-
that, I think if you do that, you give
If
people.
we could, put a handout together or get something in the library that we could refer people to that give them an idea of what is appropriate, that'd be
People
that'd be
will
better
follow
than-
that rather than go their own way, and that's a
people are going to
tendency.
do what they want to do. The people that want to do it right and want to research it will go to the library and find the document. Or,
But by doing that, you already solved half the problem. Half those people will do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the guideline, I mean, I think the consensus kind of is the guidelines are good. We like them broad. And we probably don't need to modify those, but we could certainly enhance documentation behind it. Is there any other comment? I mean, I think it would be good to look at the demolition ordinance and see. I mean, the reason we didn't take the Bliss any further, Don, was because of communication, and we worked for years to do it. But I think it's important that we are, I mean, I'm approaching more about landscape that's not watered and is dying, and houses that have trim falling off and fascia that's falling off than anything in the district. I mean, it's, occasionally you get the, gee, what are they doing here? Was that approved? But most of the comment is, God, that looks like crap. And what can you do about it? And it's like, well, short of giving people money and I mean, that's an option. Is there, can we start some kind of a grant program that puts money aside to help with some of this?
I mean, Carson City did it for the
Yeah.
facades on Main Street.
I mean, that might be something to bring up to the board when we do the annual report is, how can we do what you guys did on Main Street in the historic district and offer some incentives and give people some help if they're having problems maintaining their property. So that's way off the subject. So I just moved on to staff reports. Let's move on to staff reports since I already started it. Heather, Planning Division?
So I don't have anything additional to add other than our next meeting scheduled for March 10th.
Okay. Commission member reports, comments?
I have a follow-up comment. Last time we talked about maybe adding some sort of final sign-off signature sort of thing on, the applications that we've approved. And so I want to know, okay, how do we take that step? We should have some way to know, okay, XYZ got done as was requested in the, required in the approval. And just a follow-up mechanism and then the final sign-off. So how can we truly add that to the sequence so we don't lose this idea? It's written down last time, but what do we do with it?
Let's make that a future agenda item. And if you could look at it, Heather, and see, I mean, it's extra work on your end, and it'd be really interesting to see what that cost would be, there's a fiscal impact to having you go through things and sign
So
it off.
we're talking about staff going out and doing essentially a final inspection to make sure that whatever was
Staff, or
constructed.
it could be just.
Well,
a
maybe it's
commission
volunteer
member.
members of the board or whatever, go out
Do
and say,
commission
okay, we
members
said do
sign-offs
this
or
and this and
something.
this. What happened?
But
Did they do it?
there's a tracking process and extra work on your end to get us to a final. I think when Hope first came on, we started doing something like that and then dropped it. So it's just a question of,
Right, and Heather and I can talk about that. I have some thoughts on that, and I have some thoughts about your comment on the facade as well.
so that's a good future item. Anything else from the board?
Yeah, I just wanted to report the Rio Tinto house on Spear Street, what's 506 West Spear. They were taking down some of the fort-like material around the front, the fence and everything. And I think replacing it with wrought iron. And I think it already looks better. It doesn't look so massive on the front of the house, but they've been working on that the last week or so.
Any other commission member comments, questions? Is there any public comment? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously adjourned.